joining.
You going to say anything before I do, Shawn, or should I just start?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll just kind of do housekeeping stuff, and then I'll turn it over to you to introduce.
Okay. That's
cool.
Great.
It normally takes a few minutes for all these people to get in. Okay, we will go ahead and get started. And just one last question, Edgardo, are you okay if we record this?
I am.
Sure.
Yeah, okay, awesome. It's just for educational purposes for those students that aren't able to attend. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and record.
This meeting is being recorded.
So we're going to go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. My name is Shawn Fawcett. I'm one of the work-based learning coordinators at San Diego Mesa College. My role on campus is to help students connect what you're learning in the classroom and apply that to the real world, being able to engage with industry and getting hands-on experiences. And so one of the great parts about my job is being able to collaborate with not only faculty and students, but also our industry professionals and helping bring them onto campus, or in this environment, our virtual campus here on Zoom. Just a few housekeeping items before we get started with the event. Thank you all for coming. We have over 100 people that are watching this event, so we're super excited about that. All of you are muted upon entry. We do ask, since we have so many participants, that you keep yourself muted just to make sure that our speaker has plenty of time to share their expertise and advice. And then if you do have questions throughout the event, you're more than welcome to ask them in the chat feature. We'll be compiling those, any questions that you have to be able to ask our speaker throughout the event, and then we'll also open it up towards the end as well. So if you have any questions, whether it's for the speaker or myself or the co-host, just go ahead and let us know. But other than that, I will go ahead and turn it over. And actually, one more thing, we do love feedback about our events and any ways that we can improve them. And so towards the end, I will share out a link to a quick survey. So if you can provide feedback about the event, that would be awesome. Especially for our students, we're offering an opportunity drawing. So if you complete the survey, you can enter the opportunity drawing for a Visa gift card. So hopefully some free money will be nice for you. But other than that, I will go ahead and turn it over. And thank you so much for being here.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Dwayne Wesley. I'm the chair of the Computer and Information Sciences Department here at San Diego Mesa College. I want to thank you all for attending today's very exciting event. This is historic in the sense that it's the first Friday event that we've hosted fully online. I'm excited about that. I think we're all going through this rather strange situation that we're sharing together, the way the pandemic, and fortunately we do have the Zoom technology that allows us to come together and enjoy participating in events that is hosted such as this. So this is bringing heightened awareness to the potential of technology, how it can empower each and every one of us. It's today's presentation is about that, and about how computer information sciences, it is really expanding in so many exciting areas, and certainly virtual reality is one of those. So there's really a lot of exciting developments happening. And so today we have a speaker who is working on a research development project with UC San Diego, the human-centered product design. So he's from NANOME and is working, collaborating with Google and Hewlett Packard as well. So with that, it's my honor to introduce Edgardo Leija. Thank you.
Edgardo, I just unmuted you, so you should get a notification that you can unmute.
I was using my mouse, but I'm back now.
All good,
Cool.
thank you.
All right. Thank you for the invitation, introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. Yeah, so I was asked to talk a little bit about my path towards my current career, and happy to do so. So my name is Edgardo, and I'm one of the co-founders and chief experience officer for Nanome. And what we do is we build
Edgardo, I think you got muted again.
Okay, you should see the box. There you go.
Okay. Yeah. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So Nanome develops virtual reality software for pharmaceutical and biotech companies so that they can collaborate in a virtual ecosystem that enables them to brainstorm and design potential medicine for all sorts of diseases, including the pandemic. And so there's been interesting developments in that, especially now that everyone's working from home. But let's take a few steps back and start kind of where I started kind of in the beginning for my education. And when I first entered college, I wasn't sure what exactly I wanted to do. What I did know was that it had something to do with technology. And so I picked computer science as my major. And I really wanted to pursue a career at Google. And so I was dead set on trying to obtain an internship there. And over 2 years of doing coursework at UC San Diego, I eventually got the opportunity to participate in an internship at Google, and that was fascinating. Both because number one, I met my goal, but more importantly, I learned very important things about the work, the type of work, the kind of I learned things about myself, and I learned that even though I really enjoyed technology, I enjoyed programming, it wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do, 24/7. And so I found that I wanted to explore kind of my creative side as well. So I switched after 2 years of computer science. I found filmmaking, and I wanted to explore the arts. I wanted to create visual effects for the film industry. So I got into 3D modeling, I got into Photoshop, and creating all sorts of nice visual designs and modeling for creative projects. And once again, one of my goals was to try to obtain a real world experience with an internship, so that number one, as to get network into the field, but also more importantly to know what it's like to do what I was interested, or what I thought I would be interested in the real world. And so I ended up getting an internship with National Geographic, and that was a whirlwind. It was so much fun, but at the same time, I learned a lot, again, about myself and about the projects, about what was needed in the space. And you'll see a theme here, that it's this theme about experimentation. And it's you may have a theory about what you really want to do, but until you start doing it, especially doing it in the real world, you don't really get to know the full scope of what you're signing up for. So after I did a year of filmmaking and working in the field for several organizations at a filmmaker capacity, I then wanted to switch something back into the sciences. I found a major called cognitive science. And this is a field that studies the brain, from an anatomy perspective, but also the neuroscience, kind of the psychology component. My emphasis was on human-computer interaction. So kind of how to think about products or services in a way that creates a better user experience, and identifying the pain points and needs of potential users. And so this kind of helped me really pave the way that I start to think and design. So using my creative skills alongside with my technical skills, I started developing things like websites and mobile apps and all these things that were great in two-dimensional screens, desktop applications, mobile applications, and that was a lot of fun, and I learned a lot again. But at the same time, I wanted to do more than be stuck on this two-dimensional plane. And so I started to look into virtual reality. And at that time, it was very new. Everything was using, like, I don't know if you guys remember, but there's a crowdfunding campaign for the Oculus Rift, or just the Oculus at that point. So that's the point where I saw that this has the potential to be something great, and I kind of followed that for a little bit, but at this point I had already graduated, and I pursued entrepreneurship because I kind of fell in love with this idea of finding like addressing customer needs, improving the user experience. It was kind of like being a detective for problem solving for businesses. And so I did this every time I was developing a site for a client of mine, whether that was through consulting or through just internships. And it was great to really get to know not only the customer, but also the customer's customers, so the client's customers, because that's kind of at the end of the day, who the product service was meant for. And so really digging deep into kind of, what was the meat of the, what they were trying to achieve or solve was really what I wanted to really enjoyed, honestly. And so like I finally found something that I connected with, and this became even more solidified when I started working at Hewlett Packard. I got hired as an interaction designer, and the role of an interaction designer is to kind of develop prototypes for ideas. And so I work closely with the marketing department and the design department to kind of test theories. Think about, would this, if we tried to pursue this, X thing, would that, like, what kind of effect would that have? How would that be received? And, and just how could our product improve? At the time, I was working on a couple of different projects there, but eventually I got to work on a whole redesign of turning one of their more older websites into a mobile-friendly website, and so that was great. Getting to do real-world usability testing using the facilities that they have, where you kind of take participants into like a one-way mirror kind of a room where you kind of see them interact with the product. But you don't interfere. You're kind of like just observing and trying to take as many notes to understand like what areas of the product are not clear for a first-time user, and then translate that into design requirements and then eventually product requirements. And so, yeah, so all of that kind of helped me understand that like entrepreneurship is kind of, especially at the beginning, but honestly throughout the whole process, there's a lot of need for it's making sure that the design or the solution that is being proposed is actually adequate enough or efficient enough, well designed enough to solve the problem. And I really enjoyed that kind of customer discovery process of entrepreneurship. This is where you kind of go into the real world to gather feedback about your idea, and whether to validate whether that's a good good idea, to understand like product market fit, these things like this, kind of glossing over a lot of terms. So if there's any questions on any of the terminology that I use, please feel free to ask any questions in the chat, and we can come back to those. But in general, like, so I found something that I really enjoyed, but now, one of the most important things about entrepreneurship is you can't do it by yourself. There are a few exceptions. Obviously, some people are awesome, but like in general, you want to build a good team, and that's kind of like the foundation to what makes like great products, great companies. And so while I was still working at HP, I encountered a project that through a networking event, actually at the San Diego Zoo, that was about how virtual reality could have molecules, could display molecules in and then you could interact with them. It was a very, very rudimentary prototype. The person I met with was Stephen McCluskey. He's the CEO and also co-founder of the company. And I was fascinated by the idea of seeing molecules in VR. And mostly because I also have an interest in nanotechnology and how that will play a role and is playing a role right now. So he went to UCSD to study nanoengineering. And so his background was in material sciences, and he was always thinking about, how all the tools that we have right now are limited to the two dimensions, two-dimensional applications on web apps or desktop apps. And so he experimented with this early stage prototype of what VR could afford to this. And I fell in love. I loved the idea. I loved the potential. And essentially, after work, after my 9-to-5 at HP, I would go straight to. At the time, we didn't have any offices. It was we were at UC San Diego, and so we just had a really small space where we just got together, and from 6 to 10, maybe even midnight sometimes, we would just work on product pitches, business pitches, the product, and kind of understanding like what was the key message that we were trying to convey, so that we could achieve product market fit. And it's one of the most critical components of any business startup. And so once we got in touch with one of the so let me start over. There's a lot of parts to starting a business, and one of them, as I mentioned, was the team, but alongside the team is the advisors. So who in your network and your networks has the ability to help you connect with people in the industry that can help you either refine your idea, provide feedback on the product, or potentially even introductions to potential customers, which was one of the key ingredients to kind of the whole start of my company, Nano. And one of our advisors, Jeff Odell, he was able to introduce us to one of the local companies here in San Diego. They're the nonprofit arm of Novartis GNF, and we were able to discuss. Well, first of all, show the prototype, and they clicked right away. They have been for years looking at these molecular structures that are very hard to digest and analyze in 2 dimensions, because these are complex structures. We ended up having like a system where they would, they agreed to essentially like a bi-weekly kind of feedback loop, which is one of the most critical components, and especially in the cognitive science HCI field, where you want to constantly be gathering feedback on your product to iterate upon the product with real users. And so we had now a system where we had scientists evaluate our prototypes and provide feedback so that we can make sure that we're going in the right direction, make sure that we're actually addressing needs and problems that are in for their use cases. And so I don't know if there's any questions yet, but I wanted to show a little bit of what that software looks like, just so you guys can get a picture of it. And so, yeah, this is, can you guys still see my screen?
You'll need to reshare again, Edgardo. And then if you wanted to show your website, do the full desktop.
Yeah, this is not our website. This is just a one of the websites that we use to upload GIF animations for just all sorts of things that we capture with our software. So here you can see my colleague Kai drawing a molecule and writing on a whiteboard using an index, a Valve index headset. And this is an interesting development, because what we're looking at right now is called mixed reality, where you're capturing the subject in the virtual ecosystem as he's interacting with the application. And so this is actually a sneak preview into like the next version of our software, which will include the whiteboards. That's not yet in the current release of the software. By the way, if anybody has a virtual reality headset and wants to try the application, it's free to download. You can just go to nanome.ai and get it from there, or from Oculus or Steam. Yeah, so anyways, you can see kind of the idea here of working with a molecular structure, whether that's a small molecule or a molecular dynamic simulation. You'll notice here that this structure is moving here, and that's the reality of biology. Like, nothing is static. Everything is constantly moving. So the importance of looking at the simulations that are 3-dimensional in nature in a 3D ecosystem is super important. Yeah, and last on September 16th, I believe, last month, Facebook had their annual conference where they announced a new device, the Quest 2, which is a portable device that doesn't need you to be connected to a computer, which is pretty great, because when we first started back in 2016, 2017 with our first customer, it required quite a bit of setup. At the time we were using the HTC Vive, and so that required kind of sensors that you would hook up in different areas of the building, so that you could the room, so that you can kind of map out a space that you could walk around, and the computer, a mouse, a keyboard, and then the headset as well. And then all that, fast forward, to 2020, and now we have a standalone device that is completely, all-in-one solution for putting on the headset and going directly into to the application without having to worry about all the logistics and setups of the past couple of years. And so virtual reality as an industry has come a long way, and it's going to continue to get better, lighter, faster, more powerful. But the importance of why I'm telling you this is because, for 5 years, we tried to get into the conference, the annual conference that Facebook has, or Oculus really had. And it wasn't until this year that they actually announced the Oculus 2. And in that same keynote, they showed this clip here. So you can see our software being highlighted during the keynote presentation, where the presenter talks about how scientists are collaborating in different parts of the world for drug discovery, and the world, and the world needs this right now. Like, there's really been no better time for this technology to be in place. And with our software, the big component of that is that you can have multiple people in several parts of the planet into one VR space. And so we actually stress tested our network one time, where we had someone from Australia, someone from Japan, someone from the UK, someone from the East Coast in New York, and myself in San Diego. And we were all in this virtual world in Nano, looking at these structures, and it was a pretty amazing time. Yeah. So,
Edgardo, we have a few questions for you. Could you tell us what kind of advantages does VR have over AR, augmented reality?
Sure. Yeah. So augmented reality is awesome, and will continue to be to get better. But unfortunately, right now, especially for our use case, it's not at the power that we need it to be to address our customers' needs. The advantage, first of all, for those of you who don't know, augmented reality is when you can have essentially, imagine myself here, looking at this camera, and then having the molecule directly in front of me. What you're still looking at me, you're looking at my real world, and you're looking at this digital asset that's in front of me. Virtual reality, you're going into in a completely closed virtual space, as you see here. And then there's the other one that I was talking about, which is mixed reality, where you're bringing in the human into the virtual space. But yeah, in terms of like AR, like there's a lot of great devices out there, but unfortunately they're not yet in terms of like the field of view and the computational power. It's not quite there yet for our use case specifically. But we're very excited, and we're prepared for when it is.
And there's a question. Do you know if CalcFlow works with the Oculus Rift as well?
Yes. Yeah. So that's thank you for bringing that up. When we first started Nano, we had to make money somehow, and so we made a contract with the university to supplement one of their calculus courses through a virtual reality application, which is now known as CalcFlow. And it was great. It was being used by several of the students for several years. I think still is. And the idea there is you have kind of this the 3D VR calculator that can do all sorts of amazing things. When you change parts of the equation on the calculator, for instance, you could render the 3D representation of what that, for example, parametric equation would be. And kind of like, yeah. So yes, the short answer to that is yes, it does work on the Oculus Rift.
Also, do you know in the area of nanotechnology, are there nano researchers doing anything to try to apply nanotechnology to the COVID-19 pandemic, or actually, are there any medical applications of interest with respect to nanotechnology?
Yeah, so nanotech is such an amazing field, but I can't speak to any specific nanotech. outside of drug discovery, if you consider this a branch of nanotech. And so this actually right here is looking. We actually generated started a series of COVID in VR. So every single structure that has been made available through any of the public databases can be brought into Nano. And so, for example, COVID-19 is kind of the popular name for this coronavirus, but in the scientific world, it's known as SARS-CoV-2. And here you can see the SARS-CoV-2 main protease protein it's here in blue, beige, and orange. And what's going on here is we're actually comparing the 2019 SARS-CoV-2 against the 2003 SARS-CoV-1. So, the coronavirus, at least this mutation is new, but it's not that different to what was happening in 2003, which is so interesting to see here, especially in this virtual space here. You'll notice that, I want to make this one bigger. You'll notice that you see these orange areas here. The orange areas represent where the differences are between the 2003 SARS-CoV-2 model protein and the 2019 one. But one of the important things to note is that all of them are in this external area and not in this little pocket here. So to give you a little bit of a summary into why this is relevant is, so this little pocket where you see the small molecule here is known as the active site or the binding site. And the role of a drug discovery scientist for small molecule drug discovery is to generate and discover a molecule that can have some sort of reaction to the protein. And they do this by trying to find the best fit for these small molecules into these proteins. And so you can think of it as like a complex 3D puzzle. You have to design a 3D key. And so the best key that fits the most with the best affinity scores and all sorts of other things that are relevant for drug discovery, through a process called structure-based drug design, we're seeing a lot of advancements and all sorts of different efforts for drug discovery. And so for efforts that have a structure in their whatever they're trying to solve, whether that's cancer or the pandemic in this instance, this is a really, really great way to really get into the nitty-gritty of what is actually going on at that at the particular binding site.
So how much tactile information is embedded in these simulations here?
Sorry, how much what?
Tactile information in terms of like is that a component in the virtual reality of any sense of touch?
Yeah, so these devices come with controllers that look like this, and so kind of wrap your hands around the controller with your middle finger in the bottom, index finger on the top. Different devices have different controller types, but these become your virtual hands, and the headset become the position of your head for the avatar, for instance. And these controllers do have some built-in vibration, which can kind of simulate the feeling of tactileness, and we do support that in some instances of the software.
What sorts of technical and professional skills have you found to be essential for doing well in the VR industry and as an entrepreneur as well?
Yeah, so it kind of depends on what aspect of VR you want to get into. If you're interested in the 3D modeling component, then looking into free tools like Blender and YouTube tutorials really are a great way to get started. If you're looking into kind of the programming components, I would recommend trying to download Unity and look at their tutorials. They have a lot of interesting and easy to start with tutorials again. Yeah, it's one of the most popular game engines.
And actually, if you don't mind, that's a perfect opportunity for me to put a plug in for our CISC department and multimedia department. We're collaborating together. We do offer, the multimedia department offers Unity courses. So if you're interested in learning about that game engine, you can. They have a series of courses that you can take and a certificate that you can get for that. And we're also working with CISC to create a C# programming course where that would be integrated with Unity. So you'd learn how to do more in the way of C# scripts within the Unity environment. So Edgardo, I'm wondering, can you speak about that relationship with VR technology and gaming? And I mean, where does gaming start and end, and serious science began?
Yeah. So the industry has really leveraged gaming as kind of the force that's really bringing the VR industry to the next level. And the same thing happened with GPU cards. Actually, GPU cards, graphics cards, like NVIDIA and such, they were being used primarily for gaming, but then eventually also started to be used for science, and so now they're in the same vein. We have a lot of progress being made both on the hardware, but also on the software when it comes to when it comes to the interaction design of our software. One of the cool parts of my job is I get to play video games for research. So like I go into these VR applications to look at the interaction design that, how are, game designers looking at, user experience? How are they looking at comfort? How are they looking at text legibility? The design component of a VR application is important to me as, as an experience, someone who cares about the experience. And so, yeah, definitely, they're kind of using the gaming industry as a good stepping stone for bringing this technology to the scientists has been really helpful.
Sweet.
Awesome. Yeah, I want to also mention that when I was at the university, it was very important to get involved with student organizations. I mentioned a lot of opportunities that I was able to leverage, and those opportunities became available to me not just serendipitously. It was because I joined student organizations that had that network to outside organizations. So I highly encourage any students that want to build their network to leverage the already established organizations that make it one of their roles to connect with industry professionals. So definitely encourage that.
Yeah, since you mentioned that, we have at Mesa College the MRO, the Mesa Robotics Organization, and that's been a long-standing student club for many years. We're kind of in a state of hiatus right now because of the shutdown, but we definitely are going to be starting up again. So if students are interested in using technology for applications in robotics or Internet of Things, and for that matter, virtual reality too. I mean, virtual reality is something that we are definitely interested in working with, and we haven't seen a whole lot yet, but I do know that there are opportunities for integrating virtual reality with robotics in the sense that, through virtual reality systems or systems that are similar, you can integrate robotics, for like doing simulations and testing things out, and then but then doing robotics that are or using telepresence, like doctors that are operating remotely and that sort of thing.
Yeah, definitely. There's a lot of really, really cool advancements with the integrations of VR and other aspects of our life. So yeah, very, very much looking forward to seeing more of those.
So what would you say is the best way to increase your network? Is it just to talk to anyone, meet and reach out to them? Or are there other things you might offer for advice to kind of, expand on that?
Yeah, so while in college, I mentioned student organizations because those are easily accessible. But, when one becomes an adult, people still need a network, people still need new jobs. And there are meetups out there that are industry specific or job specific even some. So definitely, look out for, I know it's a little hard now, during the pandemic, but like one of the things that I did leverage was professional meetups through like meetups.com, where I would go out of my comfort zone and into this professional setting to meet with professionals in the industry that were already doing the thing that I might want to do, and just start speaking with them and learn about them. And that actually became very beneficial when it came to my HP job, because I had actually, when I went to do my interview, the person who was interviewing me turned out to be someone I had met at one of those meetups. And so we had already built rapport and we had got to know each other. And, he understood, kind of a little bit more background of myself. And so it made for a really, really nice transition to getting the role.
So how did you get your first internship and your first job?
So my first internship with Google was through one of the student organizations. The specific one that I'm referring to at UCSD was called SHIP, Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers. And there's several organizations. That's just the one that I connected with. And one of the things that they did was they brought industry professionals to the campus to just kind of speak and connect with the students. And in one of those occasions, they made an announcement that there was an internship opportunity. And so because I got to meet with the person who made the announcement, got to know him, when my application went through on their end, it was, again, another smooth transition during that process. So it's very important to, when doing the job hunting, to do as much proactive work to try to get to your goal. And again, like really trying to understand like what their needs are, because that's the whole purpose of them hiring, right? They're trying to fulfill some position because they have some need. And so if you get to the crux of what that need is, and you can position yourself as a person who can then provide value and help address that need, then you're going to be in a good position for them wanting to see you as a solution for their problem.
Well, we're waiting for some more questions. I'm going to ask a question of my own. What do you see as the most likely areas of advancement, and what do you think are going to be some of the exciting areas of development in VR technology in the future?
So if you want to see a really good talk on that, the Facebook annual conference that I mentioned earlier is pretty good. They have some really cool technology in the works. They talk about augmented reality. They talk about how they're working towards eventually transitioning into instead of like these headsets that I was showing earlier, more of the glasses. And it's going to take some time to make that jump, but that work has already started, and I'm really looking forward to making VR or AR more accessible.
So I want to make sure, just to let everybody know, audience know that, yeah, you can post questions into the chat box, and that way, if there's something that you're wondering about, Edgardo is going to address it. So as a smaller company, who's collaborated? I'm sorry. Since you as a smaller company collaborating with Facebook, what are your goals for the future of your company? Would you like to stay independent, grow, or are you looking forward to being bought out? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think in general, we'd like to stay independent for as long as possible. What I'm showing today is kind of just where we're at now, but the long-term vision of the company is that, in the beginning I mentioned, our shared interest of nanotechnology. And so drug discovery is just one vertical, the life science, but there are other verticals in which this immersive environment can really be helpful in the design. For example, in the semiconductor industry, when it comes to the chips in all of our phones, in the cosmetics industry, in the energy, robotics, renewable energy, all of these are industries that need to leverage more design at that nanoscale, and are already working on it. But again, the limitation of the tool, most tools, is that 2-dimension, which works to some extent, but that's kind of where we see the company progressing forward as once we can get there.
So is STEM, the STEM area, is that still a highly desired prereq for working within tech companies these days?
I'd say it depends on the role, but in general, yes. Yeah, the kind of the way that an engineer or a scientist kind of approaches a problem is good for problem solving in general. And so that's one of the ways that your coursework kind of translates into real world problem solving. It's not so much that you're going to be leveraging your actual homework problems or projects, but that that kind of mindset, the discipline, that all, and the work ethic, like really all that, that if you can build a good foundation of that during your college years, that really helps in your professional career as well.
It sounds like you made sure that you had a good grounding in STEM, but then you also bring a lot of creative, artistic sensibilities to your work as well. So it sounds like it's good if you can integrate those different aspects, those different perspectives.
Yeah, I agree. The more well-rounded you become, the better, I think, just the more diverse of an opinion you can generate, and just tackling problems in a different way. So it's yeah.
So the molecular representations that you have in your software here, are they based on a standard or custom-made model?
So in the scientific world, there's molecular file formats, just like a PDF is pretty common, in business setting. The molecular structures have a PDB file, and so that's kind of a protein file, and the small molecules have a different file type. But there's all sorts of different file types that our software is reading into this VR space, and that's super important because it's more than just importing a 3D model. We're actually importing the file which contains molecular data, so that the scientists can then change its representation, modify its design, and still be scientifically accurate, which is a huge aspect of our software.
Do you see this sort of technology being introduced to hospitals and medical schools sometime soon in the future?
Oh yeah, it's already happening. It's already happening. We're seeing interesting VR projects with that are anatomy based, looking at, for example, what happens if you could remove layers of one's biology to look at the lungs, or look at the heart, or look at the brain, and kind of immerse yourself in it. Look at the different layers, so that that really provides a different perspective, and also helps one build concrete images and experiences in your mind to help further understand.
So the trajectory of your interests went from having interest in film, and then discovering cognitive science, and then you went to VR. What was the event? What caused you to go from cognitive science into VR?
Well, I use what I learned at Cognitive Science to design experiences on apps and websites. But I kind of, after doing it for so long, I kind of wanted to try something different. Like, I was pretty used to Photoshop and designing UIs in general. And I wanted to try what 3D interaction design would be like. What are the factors that are supposed to be taken into consideration when you're not just interacting with something on a 2D plane, but also you have to worry about comfort, you have to worry about fatigue, you have to worry about legibility, and not to mention the use cases. But all of it, while using your hands, it's different than just using a mouse, which has limited capabilities. But yeah, so it's been a great learning experience, and I guess yeah, I like to challenge myself a little bit.
Right. So if you're looking to hire somebody, what would be the top 3 skills that you would look for on their resume for a potential candidate?
So again, it depends on the role, but if we're talking about like a developer role, it would be taking a look at kind of their past experience with their projects. What have they done prior to applying to this role that makes me believe they're going to do a job. And so I think looking at personal projects is, or if they have real world industry, that's even better. But any sort of personal project is a good indicator that they're self-motivated to learn, and that they can put their learnings into action and put it together, and hopefully in a good piece, in a good example. And so that's always nice. And there's other social factors as well, like making sure that they're a good team player, and that they can work with colleagues.
Sweet. So I know with VR technology, motion sickness can be an issue. Actually, I myself, I can relate to this question personally, that I have experienced this as well. Do you know, do you have any thoughts about how that might be minimized? Do you think that VR technology will somehow address that so that it's not as disruptive to some people?
How VR is not disruptive to who? Sorry?
Well, for giving people motion sickness. Yeah,
Oh.
I know for myself, if I after a certain amount of working with that stuff, I start to get nauseated and actually sometimes the symptoms will last for maybe an hour or so afterwards too.
Yeah, so I would say that that was a lot more common in the early years of VR, like around 2016, 2017. Now the hardware has gotten to the point where it can keep up the refresh rates to a good state. The hardware is one component, but the other component is kind of the software. If the software developers don't take that into consideration, comfort, it's going to produce a bad experience. And so, it's one of those critical things that, as developers, you need to stay on top of to make sure that your application fits within the range of acceptable experiences.
Right. Yeah. So are you able to incorporate the export of 3D files to be printed on a resin or FDM printer?
There are some creative workarounds for that. There's not a direct line where you could just export as a STL file for right now, even though it has been requested and it is in our backlog. One of the things you'll find as you start developing a product and working with multiple companies and customers is that you can't fulfill everyone's wishes anymore, and you kind of have to look across the board. What are the requests coming in that are appearing the most often, and then using that as a way to prioritize your product development cycle. Unfortunately, while that has come up, it hasn't come up too often. But I do hope that we get to it soon, since we know that it's possible and that it would be exciting.
So with the applications of the software, and for understanding molecules and how they work, do you see the military possibly using this to assist them in developing biotechnology weapons?
So the military has been using virtual reality for years. They technically get access to a bunch of tech prior to most consumers. If you're referring to our tool specifically, I think anyone has access to any tool, and what they do with those tools is then going to be on them. The reality is that this is just one piece of a large process for generating anything, and this is in the early stage brainstorming phase of drug design, and it's good for ideation, but there's still many steps from you found the best model to producing something in the real world.
So I just want to be cognizant of time because we're just at 2 o'clock. So maybe we have time for maybe 2 more questions, if that's okay, Dwayne?
Sure.
Yeah, I'm sorry to do this, but I do unfortunately have a 2 o'clock meeting, so I will have to drop early.
Okay.
That's wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Edgardo. This has been so fascinating to hear about your experience and your career path, and also just all the advice that you've given to students. So thank you so much for that.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah, this is all good stuff, Edgardo. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Have a great day, everyone.
Bye-bye all.
And for students and anyone that's in attendance, if we could have you complete the quick survey. Again, our MESA students will be able to enter for a Visa gift card. And so we'll announce that via email. But thank you all for attending. We really appreciate it. We hope you learned a lot. And thank you for all the amazing questions. Everyone was really engaged, so we appreciate that.
Excellent.
Thank you, Dwayne. Thank you.
Hey, thank you, George.
Thank you, Professor Valley.